A young black woman, dressed simply yet professionally, walked into a car dealership with the intention of buying her first car. But instead of being treated like a customer, she was ignored by the receptionist. Worse still, a male salesman not only falsely accused her, but treated her as though she were a threat. What they didn't know was that her mother was a tech billionaire. And when she showed up the next day to demand justice for her daughter, the entire dealership would never forget that moment. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your voice. Jada Thompson pushed open the glass door of Prestige Motors in downtown Seattle with her left hand. Her eyes, sharp and quick, swept across the polished marble floor, catching the sleek reflections of overhead LED lights. Her outfit was understated, yet polished. Every detail a quiet act of defiance. Her hair, styled in neat braids pulled back into a low ponytail, felt secure, echoing her meticulous preparation. A crisp white blouse, ironed to perfection, was tucked into tailored black pants. A charcoal backpack rested snugly on her shoulder, not for style, but for function. Inside were her laptop, backup charger, 3 color-coded car comparison charts, and a highlighter. She had spent countless nights researching Honda Civics from 2020 to 2022, meticulously marking fuel efficiency in green, maintenance ratings in orange, and insurance estimates in a soothing purple. Everything was labeled and tabbed, a tangible representation of her purpose, a fortress of facts. She wasn't here to browse, she came to buy. Her budget, a carefully saved sum of $20,000, felt both enormous and terrifyingly finite. $6,000 had come from 2 years of tutoring local kids, mostly in math and chemistry, occasionally coding for the tech-savvy teens. The remaining $14,000 was a graduation gift from her grandmother. At 19, freshly graduated as valedictorian of her STEM-focused high school and headed to MIT for computer science in the fall, Jada felt a tight knot of apprehension in her stomach. Yet beneath it, a quiet, almost defiant readiness pulsed. The low hum of the dealership offered no immediate welcome, just the faint scent of new car leather mixed with a hint of polished metal. A woman sat behind the main desk, her fingers a blur on the keyboard, the rhythmic tap-tap filling the silence, a constant, indifferent rhythm. Jada took a step closer to the desk, but the tapping continued uninterrupted. Finally, without fully turning, the woman's eyes flicked sideways, a quick assessing glance that felt more like a scan. "You here for the admin job?" she asked, her voice flat, almost devoid of inflection. Jada took a steadying breath, the faint buzz of the showroom's recessed lighting seeming to vibrate with her own tension. Her lips curved into a soft smile, the kind that balances confidence and restraint to avoid seeming too bold or too distant. "No, I have an appointment to see the blue Civic I called about yesterday. They said it'd be ready." The woman blinked once, a slow, almost dismissive motion, before her eyes shifted back to the screen. There was no apology, no warm greeting, just a slight narrowing of her gaze, followed by a vague flick of her wrist toward the waiting area. "You can have a seat. Someone will be with you." Jada nodded, a polite thank you, escaping her lips almost reflexively, the words feeling thin in the expansive room. She walked toward the row of modern leather chairs by the floor-to-ceiling window. She sat, her folder resting on her lap, a deliberate effort to keep her posture from betraying the subtle flicker of frustration igniting in her chest. This feeling wasn't new. It never truly was. The way eyes would glide past her, the way questions would be rephrased, their tone shifting depending on the skin color of the person answering. Yet this time, it felt different. This time, she had arrived prepared. Every detail meticulously accounted for. She had done everything right. Crossing one leg over the other, Jada let her eyes drift across the showroom, catching sight of a large digital display nearby. It showed a smiling white family posing with a glossy black BMW, their happiness almost impossibly perfect, like something from a Super Bowl ad. Her gaze, however, returned to her folder. She opened it, not because she needed to check anything, but because it felt like a shield. Within the precise numbers and detailed specs, she found a strange, quiet comfort. Numbers, unlike people, didn't judge. Her finger traced the green highlighter streak across the insurance quote for the Civic, the paper cool and smooth beneath her touch. It was the lowest among the 3 models she'd researched. Jada had spotted the blue Honda Civic through the showroom glass before anyone spoke to her, gleaming quietly just beyond the display line, catching the Pacific Northwest sunlight in its curves. Her heart gave a small, barely perceptible jolt. The VIN matched the printout she'd brought. She leaned forward slightly to confirm. Same trim, same alloy 18-inch alloy wheels. Her posture straightened almost imperceptibly. A small, quiet breath escaped her chest. It was here, the car she intended to buy. A young salesman finally approached, maybe mid-30s, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His name tag read, Ethan. He greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, more a perfunctory gesture than genuine warmth. "Looking for someone?" he asked, his eyes lingering on her backpack rather than her face, a glance that evaluated and dismissed her before she could respond. Jada stood, her back perfectly straight. "Yes, I called yesterday about the 2021 blue Civic. I was told it would be available for viewing today." Ethan tilted his head, feigning thought. That one's actually not available for test drives right now. Might be in for a tune-up. We've had a lot of interest in it." His tone was flat, dismissive. Jada blinked, the words landing like a dull thud. "But I called. They said it was ready." He shrugged, careless. "Yeah, sometimes they get pulled for service overnight. Happens. Might want to check back next week." No apology, no offer to check. He turned halfway toward the back office, already disengaging. Jada didn't move. She couldn't. She sat back down slowly, the folder pressing sharply into her thigh, a fixed point in her growing frustration. Her jaw clenched, a muscle twitching under her cheek. Not 5 minutes later, she saw them. Amid the buzz of a recent tech conference in Seattle boosting local business, a white couple in their mid-40s, in casual chinos and matching button-downs, stepped out of the back office, chuckling softly. A different salesman, older, more polished, led them out onto the lot, right toward the blue Civic. Jada's heart didn't speed up, it slowed. A heavy, deliberate rhythm replaced her earlier anticipation. Her eyes stayed locked on the group as they strolled toward the very car she'd been told was unavailable. The woman reached out, brushing her fingers across the passenger door. The man leaned in, peering through the window. Then the salesman casually opened the driver's side door. No service hold, no delay, just effortless access, a stark contrast to her own experience. Jada remained still, her hand clenched around the folder until her knuckles whitened. The paper wrinkled under the pressure. Her thumb pressed the corner until it creased, a tiny permanent fold in a document she had prepared with care. She stood, not stomping, not rushing. Calm, deliberate steps carried her out toward the Civic. Her movements were measured, as though walking through fog. The couple didn't notice her, lost in light conversation. Their voices hummed in the crisp air like distant static. She walked a wide arc, not wanting to interrupt. She pulled out her phone, raised it, and snapped a photo of the license plate. She needed confirmation. Cold, hard certainty. That's when she heard it behind her. Ethan's voice, sharper now, cut across the lot. "Hey," he barked into a walkie, eyes narrowing toward her. "She's filming something by the car. Call security." Within seconds, A man in a black vest appeared. Security. His face wasn't hostile, but it wasn't curious either. It was cautious, overly cautious, in a way that made Jada feel accused without cause. Ethan followed, voice low and firm. "Young lady," he said. "We've had a few incidents lately. People pretending to be buyers, filming VINs, making fake reports. I need to ask what you're doing." Jada met his gaze without flinching. "I'm comparing listings," she said evenly, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "I was told this car wasn't available. Clearly, it is. I wanted to confirm." He didn't nod, didn't apologize, just replied stiffly. "Okay. Nothing personal, just a precaution." She stared at him for a moment. Silence hovered. The tension between them was unmistakable. Then she gave a single tight nod. "No problem," she said, her words dry in her mouth like dust. The moment passed. The guard's stance eased slightly, but his eyes lingered on her too long before turning away. But something had shifted, not in the air, but in Jada herself. The frustration and disappointment had hardened into something colder, sharper, a quiet, bitter clarity. She turned and walked back toward the showroom. The wide glass doors loomed larger now, no longer a gateway of possibility, but a wall of quiet judgment. Her folder flapped open in her hand as a sudden breeze tugged at the pages. A few loose sheets, her carefully color-coded research, slipped out and skittered across the pavement. She watched them go, orange highlighter flashing in the sun as they came to rest near a discarded coffee cup. All that preparation, suddenly useless. Jada didn't cry on the way home. The drive was quiet, the kind of silence that makes you hear the hum of tires against the road and wonder why stillness feels heavier than noise. The anger and disappointment from the showroom had begun to settle inside her chest, crystallizing into something cold and hard. It was stronger than tears. She had prepared everything, every figure, every detail, but none of it seemed to matter in the face of how they operated. Opaque, dismissive, quietly judgmental. By the time she stepped through the front door of their Capitol Hill townhouse, the sun had dipped behind the Space Needle, casting long shadows. The air inside was cool, carrying a faint scent of lavender cleaner. Her mother, Lauren, was sitting at the kitchen island, still in her tailored blazer, sleeves rolled, tablet open, eyes scanning a pitch deck for her next board meeting. "Hey, sweetheart," Lauren said without looking up. "How'd it go?" Jada set her backpack down slowly, almost carefully. "It was fine," she said, her voice unusually even. "I think I'll try somewhere else." That was all. Lauren looked up, her brows knitting slightly, not in alarm, but in something sharper, awareness. There was something in the way Jada spoke, too steady, too smooth, like a freshly polished floor. No footprints, no sign of what had really happened. But Lauren knew. She knew that facade intimately. She had worn it herself too many times. It was the voice of someone who'd had a rough day. Lauren had lived long enough, seen enough to recognize the invisible bruises that kind of moment could leave. She nodded once, then gently closed her tablet. Jada passed the island and headed for the stairs, holding her folder loosely now, like a prop she no longer believed in. Lauren watched her go. She noticed the edges of the folder creased and slightly bent. One of the papers inside had a faint ridge down the middle, the kind that came from being clenched too tightly for too long. Another page had a folded corner and a faint blur where the orange highlighter had smudged. Lauren had seen papers like that before on conference tables late at night, in hotel suites before major pitches. They were the kind of documents that carried the weight of something that had gone wrong, something that wouldn't and couldn't be spoken aloud. Jada's excessive calm, the way she tried to carry herself as if nothing had happened, reminded Lauren of too many moments in her own life. Moments where, as a black woman and a tech CEO, She'd had to hold her own storm inside while projecting composure. She had long since learned to read the hidden wounds beneath professional polish, the subtle signs of prejudice, the assumptions rooted in race. She remembered a tech summit in San Francisco 3 years ago. A man in a Patagonia vest had approached her at a networking event, smiling warmly, and asked which startup she was interning for. Lauren had been wearing her company badge, Lauren Thompson, CEO, Horizon Innovations, but he hadn't read it. Or maybe he had, and it simply didn't register. Maybe he couldn't imagine someone like her holding that title. She had smiled back then, too, a professional smile with teeth. Then politely excused herself and let the disrespect pass like water off stone. It hadn't made her cry, but it had marked her. A quiet, clear understanding of how invisible bias worked. And now, seeing the invisible weight her daughter was carrying, that same familiar chill returned. Lauren looked toward the staircase, then back to her tablet. She didn't reopen it. Instead, she picked up her phone and typed, "Prestige Motors Reviews." Dozens of results appeared. She scrolled through, not deeply, not yet. But one line caught her attention. Felt like they weren't listening. Didn't even show me the car I asked about. That comment echoed Jada's experience. Another red flag. Another warning sign. Lauren exhaled through her nose and tapped her fingertip against the edge of the island. Not in fury, but in calibration. She wasn't the type to raise her voice first. Never had been. She was a tech mogul who had built a cybersecurity empire. She handled boardroom battles, diversity audits, and corporate accountability. Her power didn't come from shouting, but from precision, from knowing the law, from understanding how systems worked. She knew how to gather evidence, build a case, and turn silence into a formal inquiry with teeth, one that could affect a business's reputation, its operations, even its future. For now, she sat still, her finger tapping a steady rhythm against the granite. The quiet rhythm was not one of idle thought, but of gears turning, a plan solidifying. Prestige Motors was about to learn they had picked the wrong woman to overlook. The Tesla Model S made no sound, but the silence, when it stopped, pulled every head at the front desk upward, as if drawn by a force they couldn't name. A silence heavy and unmistakable, signaling that something had arrived which demanded respect. Lauren pulled into the lot of Prestige Motors just after 9 the next morning. The engine was silent as she parked beneath the sleek glass awning. The vehicle was clean, futuristic, not ostentatious, but precise down to every curve. It wasn't just a car. It was a statement of quiet authority, much like her. She stepped out wearing a tailored gray blazer, navy trousers, and low heels. Her hair was pulled into a sleek low bun, and dark sunglasses rested firmly across the bridge of her nose. No makeup, no jewelry, except for a minimalist smartwatch and a single band on her right hand. She didn't need flash. Her presence alone made the point clear. She wasn't to be underestimated. Inside, the air held the coolness of a Seattle morning. The same receptionist from the day before was seated behind the desk, but she didn't recognize Lauren. Not right away. All she saw was a composed, sharply dressed woman walking with deliberate steps, carrying an authority you couldn't name, but instinctively stood up straighter for. The receptionist quickly rose to her feet, her voice softer than the day before, laced now with something else. Caution. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment with someone?" Lauren paused half a second, then offered a neutral, polite smile. But behind the sunglasses, her eyes didn't smile at all. "Not exactly," she said. "I'd like to speak with someone in management right now." The receptionist blinked, swallowed quietly, then nodded. "Of course, I'll get someone right away." A few minutes later, a man appeared behind the glass door, mid-40s, neatly combed hair, light gray button-down tucked precisely into charcoal slacks. He extended a hand, a professional smile forming on his lips. "Good morning. I'm Ryan, one of the floor managers. How can I assist you today?" Lauren didn't take the hand. She looked directly into his eyes, calm, piercing, then slowly placed a folder onto the reception counter, both hands steady. It was Jada's. The corner was still creased, a quiet trace of the harm Ryan couldn't see, but was now being presented plainly. Her voice was low, steady, impossible to ignore. Each word landed like a chisel on marble, cold and precise. "Yesterday, someone came here to buy a car. She was not helped. She wasn't even considered worth helping. What happened here was blatant discrimination." Ryan hesitated. The smile on his face froze, faltered. He seemed caught off guard by the directness. "I'm sorry. Was there an issue with one of our salespeople? If you could give me a name, she doesn't need me to speak for her," Lauren cut in, voice still calm, but harder than steel. "And she certainly doesn't need anyone to excuse what she went through." The space between them tensed, air weighted by words that no one could run from. Ryan could feel it, a silent pressure that made sweat gather along his hairline. "But I believe in reminders," she continued, every syllable measured. "And sometimes it's worth reminding people that there are customers who, if you knew who they were or what they represent, the cost of disrespecting them goes far beyond an apology." There was no anger in her tone, no sarcasm, only truth laid down like the final move in a quiet chess match, one with consequences far deeper than a simple complaint. Ryan glanced between the folder and Lauren. His professional composure began to slip. A flicker of realization passed through his eyes, confusion turning to something closer to fear. "I understand. I'm very, very sorry if anyone." At the same time in the back office, Ethan was secretly peering through the frosted glass pane. He had recognized Lauren's voice the moment she began speaking to Ryan. His chest tightened, a chill running down his spine. He knew. He knew this woman had come because of what happened yesterday. His face turned pale, and he stepped back, trying to blend into the shadows of the hallway. He fumbled for his phone, attempting to call someone, but his fingers trembled, making it hard to dial the right number. Lauren's words, soft though they were, carried a terrifying weight, cutting through walls like a blade. He had never imagined that a customer could return with such formidable retribution. Ethan realized he had created a serious problem, and he had no desire to face the storm that was now bearing down on him. Lauren reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a matte black business card. No logo, no decoration, just her name and a title that didn't need explanation to carry weight. Lauren Thompson, CEO, Horizon Innovations. She placed it gently on top of the folder right in front of him. "You can keep it," she said, her voice cool and final. Then she turned. No shouting, no drama, no threats. But the silence she left behind filled the entire showroom like a bell that had just been struck. And no one knew how to stop the sound from echoing. Lauren knew this wasn't the end. That card with her name and role wasn't just a calling card. It was a quiet warning. Prestige Motors wasn't dealing with just a disappointed customer. They were dealing with a tech titan, with the tools, the network, and the experience to expose every fault line in their system. As she stepped outside, the sun had climbed higher over Puget Sound. Her heels struck once against the pavement, then softened as she slid smoothly into the Tesla. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. This story wasn't finished, and Lauren knew Prestige Motors would soon realize that the cost of discrimination would stretch far beyond the price tag of a Civic. This wasn't going to end in silence. It would end with consequences. Jada's new car wasn't flashy. No custom rims, no premium trims, just a smooth, reliable machine. But to Jada, the most remarkable thing about it was this. She could step inside without having to prove her worth. She had researched the blue Civic extensively, but after the terrible experience at Prestige Motors, her priorities had shifted. This time, she wasn't just looking for a car that fit her cautious criteria. She was looking for respect. The second showroom, a smaller dealership in Bellevue, felt different from the moment she walked through the door. No one gave her a once-over. No one asked if she was there to drop off forms or waiting for a parent. Instead, the salesperson, probably in his late 50s, soft-spoken, holding a tablet, smiled and said, "Good morning. Which part of the car would you like to look at first?" She paused for half a second before answering, not because she didn't know, but because it had been a long time since anyone let her choose. She pointed at the hood, the engine. "I want to understand how it works in the long run." He nodded without hesitation. "Let me grab my gloves. I'll walk you through it in detail." She test drove a Toyota Corolla hybrid down quiet suburban roads, then took a few gentle curves on I-90. She asked questions, smart questions, specific ones, and each one received clear, honest answers. No condescension, no offhand remarks, just respect. Lauren stood outside the showroom not far off, arms folded, leaning slightly against a railing. She didn't intervene, didn't say a word. She simply watched from a distance, not with worry, but with a quiet pride that needed no voice. The paperwork took about an hour. Jada signed her name, the keys now in her hand, steady. No more hesitation, no more folders in her lap. This time, she had everything she needed. And now, finally, someone simply let her use it. A few days later in the late afternoon, Jada walked into the kitchen. Her mother was checking her phone. A distinctive ringtone chimed, like a soft tech alert. Lauren glanced at the caller ID, frowned slightly, then answered. "This is Lauren Thompson," she said. On the other end was a man's voice sounding tense. Jada couldn't make out the conversation, but she saw her mother nod occasionally, her eyes drifting to her. When the call ended, Lauren put down the phone, her face thoughtful. Just then, Jada's phone buzzed with a new message. It was an email from Prestige Motors. She opened it, and a formal apology filled the screen. The email was signed by Ryan, the floor manager, with a direct invitation. They wanted her to return to the showroom to receive a personal apology and a special offer on the Civic or any vehicle she was interested in, as a gesture of goodwill. They even hinted that Ethan had been disciplined internally. Jada reread the email, puzzled. She had never given Prestige Motors her contact info after that day, and she had no idea why they were reaching out now. She looked at her mother, who was just rising from her seat. "Mom, did you do something?" Jada asked, surprised. "I just got an email from Prestige Motors. They're apologizing and asking me to come back." Lauren looked up at her, a small, mysterious smile forming. "I only did what any mother should, sweetheart. I just had a little conversation with them." Jada's eyes widened. "A conversation? You went there and didn't tell me." She thought about how her mother, calm, composed, powerful, would talk to them. It must not have been an ordinary conversation. A warmth spread through Jada's chest, mixed with quiet admiration. Her mother had stepped in silently and done what Jada thought was impossible. A few more days passed. Then an envelope without a logo arrived at their home. Jada brought it into the kitchen and handed it to her mother. A handwritten line on the front read simply, "Lauren Thompson, Management." Lauren slowly opened it. Inside, written in clean penmanship, was a short message. "Thank you for the timely reminder. We felt a handwritten letter better reflected our sincerity. We've begun retraining our staff and are committed to ensuring all customers receive fair treatment. You've given us a chance to see what we had stopped noticing. No logo, no excuses, just an acknowledgement that something had gone wrong and a quiet promise to do better. It was a silent victory, not loud, but resounding. Prestige Motors had truly understood the cost of crossing someone like Lauren Thompson. Lauren said little. She simply nodded, folded the note, and tucked it behind her planner. The mission was complete. Justice restored, not through outrage, but with sharp precision and true authority. That night, Jada stepped onto the driveway and opened the driver's side door. The car still held the faint scent of upholstery cleaner and new leather. No music. She didn't turn on the radio. She simply slid the key into the ignition, buckled her seatbelt, and placed her hands on the wheel. Then she looked out to the road. Her eyes were steady now. No more guardedness. No more scanning for judgment. No looking down. No avoiding anyone's gaze. Just ready. She started the engine and drove off, smooth, strong, and finally seen. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.